Good Vibes Only is here to take you on a journey to discover the weird and wacky world of wellness. It's brought to you by the globally renowned skin and wellness expert Marie Reynolds, who holds over 36 years of experience within the skin and well-being industry. Each week, Marie shares her own holistic lifestyle hacks and chats to other leading wellness experts to find out their good vibe story, discussing how they deal with day-to-day stress, anxiety, sleep, and skin issues. Listen in as Marie explores why, when it comes to our health and wellness, we need to look beyond the linear, question the norm, and think outside the box.
I am so delighted that I have got the phenomenal Clara Cohen, who is a distinguished acupuncturist. She's the visionary founder of AcuPro Academy with a profound passion for traditional Chinese medicine and a commitment to holistic healing that Clara's dedicated her career to educating and empowering practitioners worldwide. Clara's contributions to the world of acupuncture extend beyond her academy. She's a sought-after speaker, a published author, and a mentor to many aspiring acupuncturists. Her dedication to advancing the practice of TCM and her unwavering commitment to the well-being of her clients and students makes her a true leader in her field. Her passion and effervescence is contagious, and I'm beyond excited to have her on the Good Vibes Only podcast. Welcome, Clara.
Oh my gosh, what an introduction. Thanks, Marie.
It's true.
Like I should go home now. We're done. That's it.
It's true. Honestly, I've been taught in acupuncture, but I was taught by 5 Chinese professors. And acupuncture alone is a minefield because it's not a case of just placing an acupuncture needle in an acupuncture point. There are so many different levels to it. So that alone was really hard. But being trained by 5 different professors that had different views was just hard, even hard. But you were my savior throughout it all. So tell us, first of all, how did you get into acupuncture and TCM?
So you can hear from my accent, English is not my first language. We're across the pond from you. I was born in France in the French Alps, and then I moved to Canada. So now I'm in Vancouver in Canada. But I was born in France, and I always said to my husband, I wasn't finished because I was 10 weeks premature. So I always say, look how smart I am. Imagine if I had 10 more weeks, But my mom was a typical French mother who smoked 2 packs a day, even during pregnancy in the 60s. This is what everybody did. And so at 10 weeks prior to obviously 40 weeks, at 30 weeks pregnancy, I came out. And I used to say to my mom, I came early because I needed to breathe fresh air. And she said, like most women would say, there's nothing to do with that, nothing to do with smoking. It's just babies are premature, right? But I came out at 30 weeks, so 10 weeks premature. Of course, I had to be put in an incubator to be able to finish growing my lungs and being able to breathe on my own. So I had asthma as a child. Then I was also born with scoliosis, so my spine wasn't straight on top of it. And in a TCM or Chinese medicine perspective, I also grew with my teeth not being straight. So my mom was a single mother of 3, so no money for braces. I didn't have hair on my head until I was 2 years old. Like I was bald until I was 2. Funny, you look at the pictures, and my mom was so embarrassed. She would always put a little hat on my head. But so I'm sharing this because, I was sick as a child a lot. And in France, we use a lot of homeopathic remedies and botanics. So I was very much treated with this for all my childhood illnesses. However, the spine, having scoliosis, I was in a lot of pain. My back was in a lot of pain. And as a child, they decided, as my doctor, to take a team of people and to try to rectify this. So they put a brace that was very tight that I wore during the day, at least 8 to 10 hours, and I could take off at night. And the brace was to try to keep my spine from growing sideways, but staying straight, because I had mostly my scoliosis was in my thoracic, so in my mid back. And on top of that, I had to sleep. I remember that because I just cried every night. I can't sleep. I used to sleep on my stomach, of course, and with your head to the side, which is not great for your neck. And so I was laying down and crying every night because they had told me that I had to lay on my back to sleep. Not only that, but they put a plywood board underneath my sheets. So I slept on a hard plywood board to try to rectify my spine. And I used to lay there for hours going, I can't sleep, I can't sleep. And now you can put me on any flat surface on my back and I'll fall asleep, no problem. The body is so adaptable to change, especially as a child. So at the same time, they decided to put me through a rigorous schedule of twice weekly chiropractic adjustment, osteopathy. How do you say that in English?
Osteopathy.
Osteopathy. Oh, you said that. So I had that weekly, and then I had acupuncture to relax the muscle for the pain weekly as well. And I had physiotherapy as well. And I did this, I can't remember exactly, but I want to say probably a year and a half or a little bit more than that. And then eventually the brace came off and I was able to sleep on my back. And as I grew into it, my spine rectified, because as a child, it's easier because your spine is still growing. And so I don't have scoliosis anymore. I don't have back pain coming from that at all. So I am so thankful for that. So that was my first introduction to acupuncture. My second one, in my teenage years, I had dysmenorrhea really bad where, the first 2 days I can't go to school. I'm in pain. I'm bent in half in bed with the hot water bottle on my stomach and I'm just crying. And my mom's like, take an aspirin, take a painkiller. And I don't want to take a painkiller. I don't know why, but I never liked medication since I was a child. And my mom would give me medication and I was just like, I don't want it. So I would just lay there with my hot water bottle. And a friend of my mom told her, acupuncture can help with this. So she brought me to the acupuncturist when I was 14 and we had a few sessions. And again, I can't remember how many, but I don't have a period anymore because I'm in my 50s, but my whole fertile years, I didn't have dysmenorrheas. It was gone and that was that.
And just to clarify, for those listeners that don't know what dysmenorrhea is, it's painful periods, really painful periods.
You're nauseated from the pain. It's so strong. It's not a 10 out of 10. It's a 12 out of 10. And you're crying and I can't go to school. And I'm thinking I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life every month. That's just not fair, right? And often when you see the doctor, they'll say, well, you're just bad luck. Some girls have pain, some girls don't, right? And so my mom was very proactive. And so that was the second time that I was introduced to acupuncture. So I moved to Canada completely to learn English. I could have gone to England, but I wanted to go somewhere where there was big mountains like the Rockies. So I moved to Canada to learn English, which took me a while. And the idea was to go back to France, and I never did, obviously. And I worked here in the fitness industry for 15 years. I managed 2 fitness clubs and I was, in that industry and I loved it. But I felt very limited because in the fitness industry, every woman wants to lose weight, every man wants to gain muscle, and you can arrange the exercise in a different way and you can provide nutritional advice. But women would come and say, oh, my period is so painful right now. I'm in so much pain. I can't work out. Men would come in and say, I'm so stressed. I haven't slept in a week. I have no energy. I don't know what to do for that. I have no idea. I'm not trained for this. And so I felt limited in helping people. And I decided, you know what? I need to know more. So I need to go back to school and learn something that's going to help provide this for people when they are not sleeping. How do I help someone with insomnia? I don't know. Or dysmenorrhea for that matter. Oh, well, acupuncture did help me. Let's check into that. So I checked into Chinese medicine. I checked into naturopathic medicine, chiropractic. I checked in a lot of different ways, homeopathy as well, homeopathic remedy. And I checked in all the schools. And for some reason, I really loved the way the Eastern philosophy worked and looking at the root of the problem, looking at the root cause and addressing the person as a whole and not just the issue. And I thought, you know what? No, I'm going to go and learn Chinese medicine. So I did a 5-year program, a doctorate program in Vancouver, at the college in Vancouver. And the rest is history because I fell in love with this medicine and passionate about it. And I'll never stop talking about it, I guess.
Honestly, your passion and your love, it just seeps out of your pores through the screens. And I love it. I love watching your videos. Even in your books, it comes across. So how did your teaching start and the books come across?
That's a great question. I just wanted to say that this is great that we are here because this year it's the 10-year anniversary of this crazy idea I had 10 years ago. So I was teaching. When I finished school, I started practicing, and I felt very alone, very lonely. There was no internet much at the time, and it was very hard to get information. And even when I was in school, we had books, but there was no other supports. And so once I started practicing, I felt very lonely. And a few years later, I started teaching at a college, and I had an opportunity to teach. I was asked, and I said, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to teach. And they said, we're really in a bind. One of the teacher had to go back to China, and there's an emergency. And class was started in 3 days in September. So class starting in 3 days, no teachers. And they asked me. And I felt very flattered and honored, but I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not a teacher. And they're like, please, if you could help me. And I was like, well, it works with my schedule. I can come and teach this foundation of Chinese medicine. So I took my books. I didn't sleep the night before. I reread it. And then I walked into this classroom, and there was 34 students looking at me eager. And I thought, they all know I'm a fraud. They all know I can't do this. They all know I've only been practicing for 4 years. This is going to be a disaster. My face was so red. I was so uncomfortable. But like you said, I love Chinese medicine. And so I started speaking about it. And within 5 minutes, I got into my zone of excitement. And I started talking about the yin and yang and the symbol. And I got so excited, and they were asking questions, and we laugh a lot. And I came home after 3 hours, and I said to my husband, I want to do this all the time. This was so fun. I loved it because everybody wanted to listen. They were eager. They wanted to understand. And, you can talk about Chinese medicine to all the people around you. Not everybody wants to listen. Not everybody's interested, but this was a captive audience. And it was so fun to share something I'm passionate about to such a group of people that was so excited about learning it. So that started the teaching part.
With traditional Chinese medicine, when you're being taught by Chinese professors, they have this very militarian aspect to it, don't they? So it's all very academic. I learn by pictures. I learn by doing things. So I was searching and searching and searching. And when I came across your book, I thought, thank God. And it just made sense. It just literally all clicked into place. I've always learned by drawing anyway. So I've got my own big book here with my own drawings. And then I saw your book and I thought, oh my God, this is just like, it's just heaven to me. So first of all, I want to say thank you. But when did the books come about?
I agree with you in the Chinese culture is different. So they teach like they do in China, but it's hard because you come to the Western world and we are used to being taught in a different way. So there's a little bit of a clash there in the teaching versus receiving the information and sharing the information. So I felt like you that it was so hard to understand because it didn't make sense to me the way it was presented. So I remember I wanted to help my students with more support. So instead of just being in class and sharing the information, which I know, you don't always listen to everything. It's a long 3 hours, even with breaks. So what I did is I started a Facebook page where I would just post things. And I told my students, come and see there and I'll post things to kind of reinforce your knowledge, your studying and everything. So I started putting pictures and I thought, I'm like you, I'm very visual. So I thought I'll just put visual, like a point, what it does, use little cartoon characters because I think it's fun and it's like more easy to remember and to gather the information in your brain. So I started doing this on Facebook and I started created cute little videos with cartoons, and I posted that on YouTube as well. Within 2 months, I realized that there was a lot of people commenting, liking, and sharing those posts that I didn't know. They were not my students. They were people all over the world that I didn't know. And I was so shocked and surprised, and I realized that my students really enjoyed what I shared, but they weren't the only one. There's other people that did. And so I kept sharing and I kept growing. And within a year, I got 5,000 followers on Facebook. And that's a small amount of people that are all into TCM or Chinese medicine. So I was shocked by that. And people started asking, why don't you put a book together? Put a book together of all your drawings, all your points. I would buy that book. You need to. And I kept saying, I'm not a writer. I can't write a book. I don't know how to write. English is not my language. I can't do this. But people kept asking and asking. And my husband's like, when people ask for something, maybe you should give it to them. I didn't know how to write a book. So I just went online and I'm like, how do you write a book? And it was all about this academic things. And I don't want to write. I just want pictures and simple, straight to the word. I don't want big fancy phrases or sentences and long. People, there's 200 books that people can get to learn this information.
Yeah.
I just want to have something that's easy that you can look at and, really understand the basics. And then if you want to go deeper, go deeper. That's great.
There are loads of books with all of this information, but your books, they sort of like ignite everything because you're very relatable, you're very passionate about it, you're excitable about it, and that is catching. It's contagious. So you think, oh my God, because I love anything to do with TCM and the Eastern way of medicine, and I was so excited about it. But I have to say, my love waned as I was going through my training. I think you saved me because I just felt disillusioned because I thought this is not what it's all about. My background is all in energy and quantum. My passion was all about chi and how the chi flowed and all things like that. So it was a real revelation to me when I came across you. So it was brilliant. I want to touch on a few of your other passions within your acupuncture realm, which I know that you're extremely, again, passionate about. One is female health and fertility. Can you explain how TCM differs from the Western medicine in issues like endometriosis, PCOS, and also PMDD?
What I love about Chinese medicine is that, first of all, it does not treat the problem, it treats the person. And it looks for the root cause. So one is looking at the root cause. Chinese medicine can always figure out what the cause is. Doesn't mean it can always treat it, but it can always at least empower the patients to know that, okay, this is why. Now let's try to treat it with the why, right? Because nobody wants to be told, for example, I see a lot of women since 2003, for fertility purposes. And they come in, they go, oh, I have unexplained infertility. That's what they told me. Nothing's wrong with me. They did all the tests. Blah, blah. So I always say to patients, nobody likes to be told they don't know why. Because if you don't know why, then they tell you keep trying, or then try, assisted reproductive therapy like IVF and all that options. But when you tell patients the why, it empowers them and they just look at you like liberated by the fact that actually there is a root cause. It's not just unknown. And so I always say to patients, if it's unexplained by all the physical tests, then if it's not physical, you don't have any endometriosis, you don't have an ovary that is not producing any eggs, you don't have low ovarian reserve, you don't have all those issues, then it's emotional. And so when it's unexplained of some kind, fibromyalgia was like this for the longest time. People kept going to the doctor and they kept saying, oh, it's all in your head, nothing's wrong with you. Or then they figure out it's unexplained. We don't know why people have muscle pain all the time. Well, there is an explanation and it's emotional, it's mental. So it could come from a mental trauma that happened in the past that we dealt with. It could come from years and years of anxiety, worrying, which literally change the body at the cellular level. It can come from a blockage. Maybe we want to try to get pregnant, but there's something in our mind, in the back of our subconscious, that is stopping us. It could be that we have a bad relationship with our own mother, and that stops us because we haven't dealt with that relationship, and it creates a blockage. It could come from so many different areas, but it is emotional if it's not physical. So when you tell that to patients, they feel at least there is an answer. And then we can decide how we're going to go about looking at how we deal with that, right? Are they open and receiving the information? And are they open to process it, to look for help, to try to address the issue, specifically if it's something that happened a long time ago and they put the lid on it because they don't want to have to deal with it because it's scary, and fair enough, right? So, or if it's a relationship that is not quite what they're happy about. So that's the first thing that I would say is we look for the root cause. And often, specifically with chronic issues, the root cause is emotional. But it could be other things. It could be diet related. With PCOS, we know that it is polycystic ovarian syndrome. Diet's going to improve it, right? If we eat a diet that is not going to spike the insulin, there's going to be less chance of miscarriages. This has been shown and studied. So diet is going to make a huge difference, which is great. But is diet the root cause? Often it's not. The root cause of PCOS that I've seen in practice, and more and more every time I tell patients, is that it's a relationship with the mother. It's absolutely that relationship where there is a clash between the mother and the daughter. So you have PCOS and you are not able to connect with your mother. It could be many reasons, but you're not really close and loving to the point where you're like, this is the woman that embraced me, that loves me, and I feel cherished and safe in her environment. There is a clash. And I see that with so many of my patients with PCOS. When it comes to premenstruation syndrome and mood and all the stuff that's happening prior to menstruation, stress is a huge factor. And usually the stress is self-imposed stress. So perfectionist people that have women that have, that are perfectionists, that put so much pressure on themselves, it really increases their symptoms prior to menstruation as well. So I see that a lot. And it's really good to explain to patients because when I was younger and I had period pain, I was unlucky. If you have premenstruation syndrome or you're moody or you have lots of pain or other issues prior to your menstruation, well, you're just unlucky. Some women have it, some women don't. Well, there's no luck involved. It's not luck. It's just, okay, why is this coming? We need to figure out the cause and can we address the cause, right? And we see this if we give women magnesium prior to their menstruation, it's much easier, right?
Yeah.
So there's a magnesium deficiency that can be the cause. The root cause could be nutritional deficiency. So I love Chinese medicine because first and foremost, it looks at the root cause, which is important. And then the second one, it treats the person as a whole.
And I think, especially when we're talking about female health, a lot of clients that come to you is all compartmentalized because we are programmed and hard driven to think of things in boxes in a linear fashion. So automatically they think that there's something wrong with the uterus or the ovaries. But actually in TCM, we look at like the kidneys and the spleen and the heart and the liver in particular. So I think that is an eye opener. You touched on mental health and emotional well-being, and I know that that is another passion from you. And we know that each organ has an emotion attached to it. And also you touched on the miasmic values. So these are the different energetic components that we inherit from our parents. So can you touch on how TCM can help with emotional and well-being factors?
Like I said earlier, I would say that 70% of all chronic issues stem from emotional trauma, emotional issue, emotional background, whatever we want to call it. But the emotions are a huge part of how our body can heal or not, or makes us sick. And we understand that because it's very common that people have massive anxiety. And then what does it do? It creates a hole in our stomach and we have an ulcer, right? That's literally the connection there that is physical and the mental. And so in Chinese medicine, each organ, like you said, correspond to different emotions. So when we're angry, it affects the liver more. However, if the liver is not healthy, we get irritated and maybe angry. So it's which one came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's easy to remember or to see because when people drink alcohol a lot, which affects their liver, a lot of people get angry, right? We say the angry drunk, that's very common. When we worry, it affects, like I said, our stomach, right? We can create a hole in our stomach. So the digestive system, when you worry, either, when someone is really worried, either they can eat their feelings or they can't eat anything. Their stomach is a knot, they can't eat. So it really affects the digestive system when we worry too much. When we have fear, it affects the kidneys. And that's also easy to understand. When I was in school, I was trying to understand all this and it wasn't explained. So I had to go and think about it. Well, what does that look like? Why is this the case, that fear and kidney? And then I see my dog, every time he's scared, he pees, right? Like that's how he deals with it. And I'm thinking, right, if you are, really scared, let's say someone scaring you, like you're in a bank and someone is robbing the bank, you could lose bladder control. That's very common. People will do that. You're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, kidney fear. And then you go deeper and further. And when you have patients saying, oh, my child is 10 years old and she's still wetting her bed at night. Is there anything that Chinese medicine can see or can help? And I always say, look for the fear, because if she pees at night, then there's a fear there. Maybe she's been bullying at school. Maybe it's irrational fear. She's scared of something and she's not sharing. Look for that because that's the cause, right? So each of those emotions we can see affect our body. Sadness affects the lung. And when we cry, like we sob, we can't breathe, right? It's that when a child cries, they can't breathe. It really affects our lungs. So sadness really, really closes our lung because it's our breathing and we lose that breath. So that's also related to the lung, the breathing ability with depression, with sadness. So all those emotions, will affect different organ. What's interesting is we see joy being the emotion of the heart. And of course, our heart is happy, it's loving, it's full of joy. Can joy be bad? Yes, it's called overexcitement, right? I just read something recently, actually online, where someone in Manila, in the Philippines, a lady just won the jackpot in a casino. And I think it was 2 million or something. And she was playing in the casino and she was in her 60s. And, she won the jackpot, literally went into cardiac arrest and died right there in the casino.
Yeah.
And so that's the emotion. The joy is so strong. And if your heart is weak, then it can eventually not a good thing to be joyful because it can just be so much that your heart just can't take it, right?
And you also see that many comedians actually give a lot of joy, but they suffer from depression and die of heart attacks. There was a famous comedian in the UK, Tommy Cooper, who actually died on stage from a heart attack. So again, that's that emotion of joy.
Exactly. And you see that a lot. Most stand-up comedians, Jim Carrey, Robin Williams, obviously suffered publicly of depression. And that's what I love about Chinese medicine is that you can be and look joyful. And we think depression looks like someone sad in the corner in the room that doesn't talk, but it's not. A lot of the time it could be anger and depression is below it, or joy and laughing a lot and depression is below it. So it's really important to not categorize. And that's why I love Chinese medicine, because never, ever we're going to say, oh, get over it, or you can get out of depression, right? Because it was this taboo thing people didn't want to talk about. But now it's starting to be more something that people are open and vulnerable about. And it's important to really validate and tell them that, okay, let's look at why this is happening, right? Is this a chemical imbalance? This is due to diet, because diet, sugar, caffeine, lots of diet can create anxiety, right? And we take certain food to calm the anxiety, but it pertain the opposite. It'll calm you for 10 minutes and make the anxiety worse in the end because there's a gut-brain connection. So if our gut is inflamed, the brain's not going to be happy. We can't focus. We may be sad or depressed or anxious. There's a lot we can't sleep. There's a lot that can happen with the brain-gut connection. And Chinese medicine sees this because every organ in your internal organ relates to the brain, to an emotion, including the uterus, which is connected to the heart.
Yeah, exactly. And you touched also on those that drink alcohol. That was another question that I was going to ask you about addictions. How can TCM help with addictions? Because alcoholism in particular can stir up that excessive heat in the system that has an impact on not only the liver, but obviously we've got that generating cycle. You've got the heart, you've got the spleen, you've got the digestive system, all of that affected. So how would you target that? Because emotions play a huge role with alcoholism, whether that's based on, again, sadness or whether it's based on fear. So would you look at what the root cause would that be to help with alcoholism, addictions in general?
Exactly. Any addiction stems from something. This is the hard part, right? It can be from intergenerational trauma. So that's harder to deal with counseling or, different modality because it's in the past and it's in our cellular body. So that makes it harder with psychology or a counselor, for example. However, Chinese medicine is really good in tapping into it using the 8 extra vessels, right? We use those vessels which tap into certain point, and each vessel corresponds to different time in our lives. So the dai vessel, which is called the belt or the girdle because it's around our waist, this one connects to everything that was prior to our birth. So it's anything that's happening intergenerational. So we have to tap and use those points to try to let this emerge for us to release it, to process it, to move forward. Then anything that happens in the first 7 years, we look at the Chong vessel, which is called sometimes the penetrating vessel. So that's the first 7 years of our life. And then we have the next 7 years from 7 to 14, which is the Ren vessel, which is the conception vessel, which is when we start being able to conceive, right? As men and women, we start to be into our teenagers and our reproductive system grows into it. So each of those 7 years, if something happened prior to 7, we have to tap in the Chong meridian if it happened from 7 to 14. And a lot of people, all those things may happen while you were a child or a teenager, especially if it was sexual trauma or abuse, because at that time, this is when it's more common. Doesn't mean that it's not later on, but it's more common at that time. So we can look at this, and if the person is consenting to awaken this, to let it emerge, so we can then deal with it, process it, and be able to move forward, because otherwise the body is going to be stuck and we're not going to be able to heal from the addiction, for example, which could come from prior, or it could come from a trauma. And this is how we deal with the trauma, with control, right? With fear. So sometimes it is anger, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's all of them that are stuck and trapped in the cell and they need to be released. So that's often the case. So looking at addiction, there's a lot of work to be done. Yes, we can use the ear and the NADA protocol, but it's not enough. We need to look at the cause, right?
Yeah, you have to go into the root cause. With the quantum medicine, it's believed that every decision that you make has an impact, or it imprints the next 4 generations' DNA. So that can be switched on or switched off depending on what traumas or what addictive type personalities, because we can get addictive constructive as well as destructive. So you can get that constructive where you're a workaholic or you go to the gym every day, and that can be just as destructive, can't it?
Absolutely. I've seen it. I was in the fitness industry for many years, and there are people that, worked out 6 hours a day every day and were obsessed with it and just never took a day off. And I'm like, you need to rest, you need to recover. Like, that's just everything has to be balanced, right? And people have this, and specifically, I wowould say in our world today, a lot of people, the overworked is celebrated. The more you work, the harder you work, you work 80 hours a week, woohoo, you're going to get a promotion, right? Like, it's celebrated to push yourself to the point of just being exhausted. And then one day you can't get out of bed and, what do you do? So I think that's society also embrace overwork, and we think, oh, it's a good thing, but it's not on the long term. You may have to do it for a week or two to, help yourself if something happens, but in the long term, it's all about balance, right?
So it's that hard wiring again, isn't it? It's that hard wiring that we have grown up with. But I think it's even worse now, especially when you go onto social media. It's all that pressure that you've got to keep up with the Joneses. It takes your breath away, doesn't it? You think, oh my God, I can't deal with that. I could talk to you all night. You are so interesting and you're such a gorgeous human being. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come on today. And is there anything coming up that Clara wants to announce, or that you've got any plans?
Oh my God, you're so cute. First of all, thank you. And I am so happy we met online. I hope one day we can meet in person, because what you do, you're like my little Einstein of our world. You're so smart in what you do online and what you share and your research. You test things and you try things. And I love that, because that's how we continue to learn and to grow. So I love that. First of all, thank you for having me. But I think that Chinese medicine has so much potential to continue to wow the world. And I think with people like you, with people that, share all their knowledge online, we have an opportunity to really educate the world on possibility, that they're not just having one option. There's many options. And, what you do is options. What I do are options. And so I'm excited about the future. In this year, July 2024, this year, we're celebrating 10 years of AcuPro Academy. So I'm having a big online Zoom party. I hope you can come. It's on a Friday on July 19th. And we're going to have so much fun. And it's just time to celebrate that the internet has opened a door for all of us to be able to say, no, I'm not going to sit here and listen to someone that says you have no options. I'm going to look for options. And that's why I love the internet, because it made us meet. It made like a really open connection. and it opened the world to possibilities. So let's continue to do that. So thank you for having me.
Oh, listen, it's a pleasure. And huge congratulations. Of course, I would love to be there, definitely. So I will be there celebrating with you. And Clara, I honestly can't thank you enough for all of the hard work and effort that you put into your passion for TCM.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's Good Vibes Only episode. But there's plenty more wholesome, holistic information where that came from. Check out Marie's website, www.mariereynolds.london.com, or follow Marie on socials. For Marie's products, follow at Marie Reynolds London on Instagram and Facebook, and at Marie Reynolds_London on TikTok. You can also follow Marie's day-to-day content on Instagram. Follow at Marie Reynolds_MRL. Thank you so much for listening to Good Vibes Only. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe to and review the podcast wherever you listen to them. And remember to share the episode too. See you next time.